The people of Israel stand in awe upon the far bank of the sea, gazing at bodies of dead Egyptians washing ashore.
I always think it's ironic that given Ramses' grand projects, his many enormous, colossal statues of himself, his many sons, his many buildings that he built, that what we really remember from this time period, the thing that really excites us, is not Ramses and his accomplishments, but rather the legacy of Moses, the Redeemer, the covenant that he built between the people and their God and the living faith of Israel.
What are Moses' thoughts as he sees his people safely delivered from Pharaoh's bondage? The Bible doesn't tell us. But perhaps as Moses listens to the people sing praises to God, he experiences joy and satisfaction at bringing Israelites out of Egypt, and yet he senses a grim awareness of what is to come. Moses must surely know what lies between here and the Promised Land, a trial far more challenging than anything suffered in Egypt, for ahead lies the great wilderness of the Sinai Desert. As they leave Egypt behind, the Israelites expect to take the easiest route to Canaan, along the Mediterranean Sea. But Moses has a different plan. He takes his people into the searing heart of the Sinai Peninsula, toward Mount Sinai, the mountain of God.
Then Moses led Israel forward from the Red Sea. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" Exodus 15:22.
In fact, as we look at the route that the Bible reports that the people took, it actually makes perfect sense, because what they did was, instead of going the short, easy way, which was guarded by Egyptian caravan cities, they went to the south so they could avoid being recaptured.
Far from being grateful to be free from slavery, the children of Israel complain incessantly as soon as they're faced with the difficult task of surviving in the desert. As they trudge through the wilderness, their miserable existence in Egypt begins to seem like a paradise. To them, Moses is now the fool who lured them away from it.
And the people of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness, and said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Exodus 16:2.
It may not be a coincidence, after all, that they are called the children of Israel, because at times they act like children. They complain, they cry, they don't take account of all the things that have been done to them nearly as much as they take account of all the things that haven't yet been done for them.
Within a month after leaving Egypt, each passing day saw the plight of the people grow worse, and the people were accusing Moses of bringing them into the desert to die.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God." And in the morning there was on the face of the wilderness a fine flake-like thing, fine as hoar frost on the ground. Now the house of Israel called its name manna, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And the people of Israel ate the manna 40 years till they came to the land of Canaan. Exodus 16:4.
The people did as Moses instructed. They were filled with wonder as they gathered the strange honey-flavored drops found near desert plants each morning. They called this manna from heaven. And in the evening, clouds of quail fell at their feet, giving them all the meat they could eat, as Moses had promised.
This manna appearing every morning and birds dropping out of the sky every night makes the Bible totally unbelievable. How could this possibly have happened?
There is actually an excretion by a small scaly insect that looks rather white and dough-like and has the taste of honeydew. And these insects live in tamarisk plants in the desert, and you can go out every morning and pick the manna off of the plant, and as long as you get it in before the sun melts it, because it melts very easily, you actually have a foodstuff, and it's considered quite a delicacy by the Arabs of the desert.
The manna from heaven, which appeared each morning with the dew, was probably the round secretions left on the tamarisk bushes by burrowing insects. The honey-like hard drops are gathered by shaking the branches over cloth and then ground into flour. The manna phenomenon still occurs in the Arabian deserts. Even today, the desert Bedouins gather and use it, still calling it manna from heaven.
Both biblical and non-biblical evidence provides a very clear picture of the quail phenomenon. In April and September, these birds migrate by the millions between Europe and Africa. A strong wind, as the Bible indicated, blew vast flocks of these quail off course about 100 miles inland, where they dropped from exhaustion of fighting the wind. The Israelites could have easily gathered millions of these birds and used them for food.
Yet again, God has saved His people. But the Hebrews' faith lasts only as long as their stomachs are full. Hunger and thirst have been conquered, but a new enemy appears. The wandering Israelites stumble into territory controlled by the Amalekites, fierce tribesmen who viciously attack the former slaves. Suddenly, the demoralized, bickering Israelites must pull together and fight for their lives. Moses appoints a sturdy young Hebrew named Joshua to choose the men who will fight the Amalekites. The next day, Joshua desperately leads his chosen warriors into battle. Moses climbs a nearby hill and raises his rod over the battlefield.
Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary. So they held up his hands until the going down of the sun. And Joshua mowed down Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Exodus 17:11.
With the Amalekites beaten, Moses and the Hebrews draw nearer to their destination, Sinai, the mountain of God.
There is no archaeological evidence for the 12 different alleged sites of Mount Sinai.
Actually, none of the suggested sites in the Sinai Peninsula fit the biblical requirements. The traditional site, called Jabal Musa, and located near St. Catherine's Monastery, fails all of the historical, geographic, and archaeological tests. This popular site was identified in the 3rd century by Queen Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine. She was a mystic who endeavored to identify holy places with little regard for biblical or geographic facts.
Some recent and very exciting archaeological discoveries have led scientists away from the traditional sites on the Sinai Peninsula across the Gulf of Aqaba to an intriguing site in Saudi Arabia.
Jabal el-Lawz meets the biblical criteria for the true mountain of Moses. First, it had to be located in ancient Midian, which is in present-day Saudi Arabia. Secondly, on the backside of the mountain, there must be a vast desert as you see here. Thirdly, it must be located completely outside of Egypt and its controlled territories, which would exclude the Sinai Peninsula. None of the other proposed mountain sites fits all these requirements except Jabal el-Lawz.
In 1988, we traveled the Exodus route from the tip of the Sinai Peninsula into Saudi Arabia, using the Bible and satellite imagery to find the actual route. Inland, 33 kilometers, we found the bitter springs of Marah, as mentioned in Exodus 15. This dirt sample from the springs has been chemically analyzed and was found to contain excessive iron and dissolved salts, making it very bitter. Continuing along the route, we came to the clear water springs mentioned in Exodus 15:27. Here, caves were being excavated by Saudi archaeologists. They said they had found writings in these caves indicating that Moses had come through this area, and that the tombs of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, and Zipporah, the wife of Moses, were found in these caves.
We did find what I think is important archaeological evidence that something took place at Jabal al-Lawz. We found at the base of this mountain 12 pillars, 18.5 feet in diameter. Why not 7? Why not 11? Why 12? With 12 tribes of Moses fitting so perfectly into that scenario. Additionally, on the flat in front of this mountain, we found a large pile of rocks about 24 feet tall. There's a petroglyph of an Egyptian, not an Arabic drawing, but an Egyptian drawing of the golden calf. And additionally, at the base of the mountain, we found kind of a wing-shaped formation, foundation pointing towards the mountain, and there we found marble, round marble stones. This is some of the stone of it. This rock is not indigenous to that area of Saudi Arabia, let alone to Saudi Arabia. Somebody brought this in a tremendous distance. Something really did take place at this mountain, and it may well have been the Exodus. We found the stone boundary markers for keeping the Israelites off the mountain. But most startling, we found an 8-foot petroglyph of the Egyptian Apis bull god and a campground large enough and with enough water for the entire Exodus tribe.
To our amazement, we found the top of the mountain to be black, as if the rocks had been burnt, possibly confirming the biblical scripture that the Lord descended upon it in fire and smoke.
Recently, in a surprising move, the Saudi government closed down the Jabal al-Lawz site abruptly and posted a military guard to prevent further exploration of the site.
If it allows archaeological excavations of ancient Israelite sites in Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud opens itself up to the anger of the Arab world.
Moses has done what he once feared he could not do. He has brought his people out of bondage to meet their Lord. But he has paid a heavy price for his triumph. His once beloved family has all but disappeared from his life.
One wonders what kind of family life Moses the Redeemer actually had. At least at some points, the Bible makes clear that his family is not with him. Certainly, he's always being afflicted by the children of Israel who want onions, they want mushrooms, they wish it was the way it was back in Egypt. They're not there yet, they're tired, they're thirsty, and so on.
Moses, the simple shepherd, the husband, the father, has become a man all consumed by a mission. He now seems closer to God than anyone on earth. Perhaps he always was.
I always felt that Moses was a lonely man, that he took on this incredible burden for God, for the sake of God, and for the sake of the Israelite people, but he really had no one to share that burden with. I think one can almost imagine his best friend being God, that only God understood what Moses really felt and what Moses really experienced in his taking on of this really kind of immature people.
But if Moses feels self-pity, he has little time for it. He has brought Israel to Mount Sinai. Now he must ascend the holy mountain. Once again, he will stand face to face with God and find out what the Almighty wills for him and for his ungrateful people.
Probably due to the many years in Egyptian bondage, the differences among the various tribal groups were much greater than their similarities. Strange Egyptian gods were still worshipped, and ancient pagan rituals still practiced. There was no common law to fit crimes and punishment, and violence began spreading like a plague.
Sinai, holy mountain of God. One of the most incredible events in history is believed to have taken place at this spot, when Moses brought the children of Israel here to hear God's words.
Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me, above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Exodus 19:5.
If they will accept his commandments, a binding agreement will exist between God and Israel. They will become his chosen people, entrusted with the task of preserving his laws and of making them known to the rest of the world. And so, on the third day of the third month, to the sound of heavenly trumpeting and a cataclysm of fire, smoke, and earthquake,
on the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mountain. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. And Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. Exodus 19:16.
Some of the most intriguing biblical passages concern Mount Sinai and the handing down of the Ten Commandments.
Mount Sinai was covered in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke ascended as the smoke in a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked loudly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded and waxed louder, Moses spake, and God answered. Exodus 19:18.
When Moses returns with the Ten Commandments after his encounter with God or Jehovah on Mount Sinai, his skin mysteriously shines with an unearthly glow. His hair has turned snow white.
The story of Moses has been tied in with an extraterrestrial encounter. His hair was turned white, which some have linked with the possibility of radiation exposure and so forth. It's easy to see how this could be regarded as a classic UFO encounter.
The notion that the Israelites may have been led to the Promised Land by some form of extraterrestrial entity has attracted many adherents in the last few decades. But understandably, scientists and religious leaders fiercely challenge the idea.
We're dealing very much with an interpretation, and we're dealing with an issue that I think has potential for being highly controversial, because after all, if you say that Jehovah is an ET, then that changes the basis of Judaism and Christianity in a very fundamental way. But it is a question of interpretation.
Camped at the foot of the sacred mountain, the Hebrews are terrified by thunder and lightning and angelic trumpet blasts announcing the presence of their Lord. They plead with Moses to act as their go-between with God.
The people were afraid and stood afar off and said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will hear, but let not God speak to us, lest we die." Exodus 20:18.
God calls Moses to the top of the stormy, cloud-shrouded peak. As Moses stands before him, God speaks the words which will echo down the centuries. Receiving the Ten Commandments is the crowning moment in Moses' life. The moment when he fulfills his life's work of bringing the holy word of God to his people.
Written with the finger of God.
Atop Mount Sinai, he is the holy seer, who alone among men can bear to look upon the face of God. He alone can hear the divine commandments and bring God's precious gift to a frail humanity much in need of guidance and wisdom. The worship of one all-powerful and invisible God is a revolutionary idea in Moses' time. For most nations worship many gods and live by many codes of conduct. A single, omnipotent, and benevolent God imparting 10 commandments as the basis for a moral life is a unique event in history. From now onward, Moses will be honored as a prophet.
The Bible uses intriguing language to describe the relationship between God and Moses. It says that Moses and God talked face to face as if they were friends. There is this taboo in the Bible against a person seeing God directly, face to face. So it's hard to understand what exactly this metaphor means. Whatever it means, we know that it signifies that this is a unique relationship. No human has ever glimpsed God the way that Moses does, and no one has ever had such a close relationship.
The Bible says that forever after, Moses' face shines with a peculiar brightness, with the very glory of the Lord. But his shining countenance frightens his people. So Moses wears a veil over his face, taking it off only to speak with God. The 10 Commandments inscribed on 2 stone tablets will change the course of history. They will form the basis of humanity's laws for all time. Simple yet powerful injunctions against killing, theft, adultery, and bearing false witness against one's neighbor, all those remain with us today as the cornerstone of the world's judicial system.
In addition to communicating the Bible to Moses, God speaks the 10 Commandments directly to the people. Here, for the very first time in history, are concepts about violence, about how people ought to treat each other.
The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. There God spoke these words unto him. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not kill. Exodus 19:20.
The Bible represents a turning point. More than a collection of great stories, this singular work contains a set of moral values that are virtually unprecedented. Never before have humans had such a set of ethical and democratic standards. But were they unique? Were they the first of a kind?
There are a number of ancient law codes, the most famous of which is called the Code of Hammurabi, which predate the biblical law code and which have similar laws. What they don't have is that theoretical idea that ties all the commandments together, the idea that every human being is divine, irreplaceable, invaluable, and therefore how you treat every individual matters. In Hammurabi's code, for example, there are different penalties for killing somebody who's rich and killing somebody who's poor. In the Bible, a human life is a human life because every human face is stamped with the image of God.
But the 10 Commandments do seem to give us an overview of some of the main concerns of Hebrew law. There are the concerns for family sanctity, for example, of preserving the family structure. Economically, the family was an extremely important building block of ancient Israelite society. Your economic well-being depended on the integrity of the family, of passing down from generation to generation the economic life of your family and therefore of your tribe.
And what the 10 Commandments say is that therefore, how human beings treat one another is of interest to God.
Pagan gods cared about how you treated them, but not about how you treated each other.
And that's what's different from the Ten Commandments and all previous laws. That is, God doesn't just care how we act towards God. God isn't just a God who pays attention to sacrifices and prayer. God cares if I lie to you, to another human being, and that's what makes it unique.
And yet, even one of the most vivid commandments, the prohibition against taking another life, is open to some interpretation.
The Hebrew is not really "thou shalt not kill" of the Ten Commandments. The commandment in the Ten Commandments is "thou shalt not murder." Because clearly the Bible does not expect that Israel and human beings in general will never kill. In self-defense, killing is permitted. In certain wars, killing is permitted. And even the Bible sanctions capital punishment for some offenses.
Many scholars have long puzzled over the commandment that strictly forbids the making of graven images.
That's a very interesting mystery about the God of the Bible. Why are they never allowed to portray this God in any way? No pictures, no statues, no images. It's a very interesting element of the religion of the Bible, and it serves to clearly differentiate them from the surrounding religions, particularly of the Canaanites. The famous Canaanite god Baal, after all, was frequently portrayed in a statue form. We have some of the statues of Baal that have been discovered by archaeologists.
Baal was often depicted in the form of a bull, a symbol used by pagan worshippers throughout the Middle and Near East since ancient times. It would soon play a featured role in the drama at Mount Sinai. The covenant is sealed. The Ten Commandments, divinely written by the finger of God, are given to Moses. 10 simple laws containing some of the most profound and revolutionary ideas in human history. They speak of mercy, of justice and temperance, and proclaim monotheism, the existence of only one God, forever severing the Hebrews from the pagan religions that were practiced up to that time.
There are 3 conflicting stories about the Ten Commandments in the Bible. In one place, Moses cut the stones and wrote on them. In another, Moses cut the stones and God wrote on them. And in the third place, God cut the stones and God wrote on them. If Moses and God can't get the story straight, why should we believe it?
The Bible is very clear. God originally wrote the Ten Commandments on stone tablets of his own making and gave them to Moses. After Moses smashed the original tablets when he saw the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, Moses cut another set of tablets and God wrote on those too. There's really no significant evidence in the Bible of a third set of stone tablets. Any reference to a third set comes from a misinterpretation of one passage where the Bible is really telling about the second set of tablets.
Here an artisan is cutting and shaping stone tablets with much the same tools and methods as Moses would have used. Moses would have been able to hew and finish the stone tablets that he carried for his rendezvous on Mount Sinai. These 2 pieces of granite stone carved in Israel are probably a very close replica of the real stone tablets, complete with the Ten Commandments chiseled on them.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Exodus 31:7.
When he descends the holy mountain with the 2 tablets, he will make a shocking discovery. He will find himself and his God betrayed. This time not only by the Israelites, but even by his own brother. When Moses disappears into the cloud atop Mount Sinai, he is gone for 40 days. Atop the mountain, he receives the 10 Commandments from God. But while Moses hearkens to the holy words of God, the Hebrews once again respond to words of temptation.
When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Exodus 32:1.
Aaron meekly bows to the demands of the faithless mob. He collects the Hebrews' gold jewelry to make a new god, a golden calf. Calves and cows were worshipped throughout the ancient Near East. Egyptians venerated the cow goddess Hathor. In the land of Canaan, young bulls were sacred. But the Israelites were forbidden to worship pagan idols.
Most people believe that the golden calf was a substitute for God, but it wasn't. The golden calf was a substitute for Moses. Remember that the Israelites had just come from Egypt, where everything was visible. Egypt was a society that was very dedicated to seeing things. Pyramids, sphinxes, even mummified, even the realm of the dead was made visible. And what is God's message to the Israelites? That the visible is not the realist part of the world. The realist part of the world is the invisible, the intangible. God is the most real thing, and God is that which you can't see. Now, to this people who is used to seeing things, that's a very hard message. But as long as they had Moses there, they could see Moses was the one who speaks to God. So even though we can't see God, at least we can see Moses. Suddenly, Moses disappears up the mountain. Now, the Israelites aren't stupid. They know that the golden calf didn't take them out of Egypt, right? They know that. After all, the golden calf didn't exist 5 minutes ago. But they need a visible symbol of God. They can't get along without that symbol. They're too trained to see things. So they build a symbol of God in the absence of Moses, because they haven't learned yet that the key to worshiping God is to see the reality of the mysterious, of the intangible, of the invisible.
High atop Mount Sinai, Moses is unaware of his people's spiritual infidelity, but God is deeply aware of it.
And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people have corrupted themselves. I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them." Exodus 32:7.
Moses pleads with God not to destroy the Hebrews. He dares to argue on behalf of a people who have not only betrayed, but forgotten him.
O Lord, why does thy wrath burn hot against thy people, whom thou hast brought forth out of the land of Egypt? Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom thou didst say, "I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven." And the Lord repented of the evil which he had thought to do his people. Exodus 32:11.
When God saw that the people were worshiping the golden calf, God wanted to wipe out all the Israelite people and create a people from Moses himself. And Moses begged God. He said, "No, don't do it. Remember your covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember that the nations of the world will say, look what the God of the Israelites did to the Israelites." That God would develop a bad reputation. So Moses somehow had a faith that his own people would pull through.
Holding the stone tablets engraved with God's law, Moses descends from Mount Sinai. As he nears the Hebrews' camp, he hears something that infuriates him: the sound of singing.
According to legend, the Israelites were not only worshiping the golden calf, but they were having this massive orgy. They were publicly fornicating. They were indulging in all the pleasures that they could imagine.
And as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. Exodus 32:19.
When Moses saw the golden calf, what he saw was a rejection of his own life's work and message. How could a people who left Egypt and witnessed God's redeeming hand, how could a people like that forget about their God and forget about their leader enough to create a golden calf to replace their own God? That made Moses so angry, so wrathful, that all he could do was destroy part of his own people.
Standing at the entrance to the Hebrew camp, Moses gathers the loyal sons of Levi to his side. Israel's savior becomes Israel's executioner.
And he said to them, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword at his side, and go throughout the camp, and slay every man his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. Exodus 32:25.
The killing of 3,000 people as a result of the golden calf experience perhaps can be explained in two ways. Number one, Moses, who has committed himself to this belief in this one God and has taken his people out of Egypt following that faith, now is presented with these people building the golden calf, and he just lets out all of his anger and his rage on the people in the most terrible way possible. On the other hand, one could say that the people building the calf have rejected the God of Moses. And in some way, Moses is simply doing what God expects, namely to root out of the people those who've rejected God's presence in the world so that people can continue to live and move towards the promised land.
Finally, Moses confronts the one whose betrayal hurts most of all, Aaron, his own brother. Aaron feebly offers only excuses.
And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. For they said to me, 'Make us gods.' And I said to them, 'Let any who have gold take it off.' And I threw it into the fire, and there came out this calf." Exodus 32:21.
The next day, Moses wearily trudges once more up the slopes of Mount Sinai. The precious tablets of the law, the culmination of his work, lie shattered on the ground. His people, slaughtered at his own command, bury their dead. His brother, his closest ally, has failed him. It's perhaps not surprising that when he reaches the top of the mountain, Moses gives God an ultimatum. Forgive the Hebrews for what they have done, or absolve him from his mission. But God replies that he will punish those who have sinned, and that he has another task for Moses, his reluctant prophet. God tells him that the time has come to lead the Hebrews out of the Sinai wilderness toward the promised land. After 40 years of leading his people through some of the world's harshest desert, Moses at last receives God's command to lead the Hebrews to their promised land. Despite their punishment for making the golden calf, and even though God has saved them in the wilderness, the Hebrews' faith remains as shaky as ever. Again and again, God threatens to annihilate his people. And yet each time, Moses pleads with God for mercy.
One can only wonder how Moses keeps his sanity through this ordeal. We know he has his sister with him, Miriam. We know he has his brother with him, Aaron. And basically that's it. That's his inner circle of support. And of course, there's God. God might well be a mixed blessing for Moses. At once his strength, but also his master, and the one whose strange and difficult will Moses is forced to do. It's hard to imagine that Moses could say no to this God.
By now, the immense burden of his mission and his intense personal relationship with God have all but removed Moses from human companionship. He spends most of his time alone in a special tent outside the Hebrew camp called the Tent of Meeting. There he speaks with God.
I think that Moses was someone whom the Israelites could approach but could never know. They could ask him questions, but they couldn't make small talk over a drink. Moses was a powerful and impressive and stalwart figure. And I think that you met Moses and realized, this is a better man than I, but it would be hard for me to draw close to him. In some ways, he lives in this world, but in some ways, he walks with God.
As the Hebrews struggle on toward Canaan, Miriam suddenly dies.
We can ask ourselves, what might Miriam's death have meant for Moses? The death of his sister, his loved one, his rescuer way back when he was an infant, the one who brokered his adoption with Pharaoh's daughter, the one who'd been with him through thick and thin. What grief for this man who had so few friends. What a loss.
Moses buries the sister who watched over him when he was but a baby drifting helplessly down the Nile. Disrespectful of his grief, the Hebrews complain yet again, now because there is no water to drink.
Wherefore have ye made us to come up out of Egypt, to bring us to this evil place? It is no place of seed, or of figs, or of vines, or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. Numbers 25. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. And thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. Numbers 27.
God tells Moses to draw water from a nearby rock. But Moses, upset with the Hebrews and grieving for Miriam, vainly strikes the rock with his staff. Water flows from the rock.
Ironically, it is this deed that has condemned Moses. In a fleeting moment of anger, he strikes the rock in defiance of God.
The Lord is angry at Moses for publicly disobeying him. Soon after, he issues a grim command to Moses.
The Lord said to Moses, Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall die there. Numbers 20:22.
With his brother and his sister dead, his wife and children long forgotten, Moses has only God. After 40 years of wandering, the Hebrews at last arrive at the borders of Canaan. As they approach the ancient city of Jericho, God calls Moses to the top of a mountain called Nebo. from its summit, Moses looks beyond the River Jordan and sees for the first time the Promised Land. Now God tells him that because he disobediently struck the rock, he will never enter the Promised Land.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Get thee up into this Mount Abarim, and see the land which I have given unto the children of Israel. And when thou hast seen it, thou also shalt be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered. Numbers 27:12.
After all Moses has suffered doing God's work, it seems a cruel and terrible punishment for a seemingly trivial offense.
One of the great mysteries of the story is, what is the sin of Moses? What is it that causes God to say, you may not enter the Promised Land? We have this story. The people are thirsty, and God tells Moses to speak to the rock. And Moses, it says, strikes the rock twice with his staff.
As Moses gazes at the Promised Land, God tells him it is time for him to die. Moses appoints Joshua as his successor to lead the people into Canaan.
One wonders with what ambivalence Moses hands over his mantle to Joshua. One wonders how Joshua could ever imagine filling those shoes. One wonders whether Moses wants and can let go of the power and the glory. And one wonders whether Joshua feels that he's fit to assume it.
Under their new leader Joshua, the Hebrews prepare to cross the Jordan River and claim the fertile land God has given them. But Moses, who brought them through the wilderness, prepares for death.
So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. No one knows the place of his burial to this day, and there has not arisen a prophet since like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Deuteronomy 34:5.
3,000 years after his death, the exemplary life of Moses endures as more than a sacred memory. His legacy lives on in the hopes and the deeds of all who seek justice, tolerance, and compassion in a world ever more in need of these principles. He was a unique figure in history, and yet for all his towering accomplishments, he was but human.
The way the Bible presents Moses, he was a great but solitary man. He was not intimate with them the way his brother Aaron was. He was distant and forbidding in some ways, and yet he leaves the greatest impression in Jewish history of anyone, because the force of Moses' love, even from afar, was so powerful and so impassioned that the Jewish people have never forgotten him and have never ceased loving him.
If biblical accounts of the Exodus are historically viable, then there should also be evidence of Israel's arrival in Canaan, the Promised Land, sometime between the 14th and 12th centuries BC. Such evidence does exist. More than 3,200 years ago, the pharaoh Merneptah ventured out of Egypt on a military campaign through the land of Canaan. Later, in a poem proclaiming his victories, he boasted that Israel is laid waste. This inscription dates from about 1210 BC and establishes that the Israelites had arrived and settled in Canaan well before Merneptah's conquest at the end of the 13th century. Additionally, at Tel Amarna in Egypt, archaeologists have uncovered a series of letters on cuneiform tablets. Many were authored by Canaanite rulers early in the 14th century BC. These letters contain desperate pleas to the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten for military assistance to defend Canaan from nomadic invaders. One of them warns that if Pharaoh does not act, all Canaan will be lost. The invaders were identified by the name Apiru.
And this is kind of a generic term for stateless individuals, people who weren't connected with any particular urban center. And so the Israelites undoubtedly would have been referred to as either Apiru or Asiatics by the Egyptians.
I do think that the term Apiru is the origin of the term Hebrew.
If the name Apiru referred to the Hebrew people, then the Tel Amarna inscriptions provide strong evidence for the presence of Israel in Canaan. They also suggest Israel may have entered the country earlier than scholars had previously thought, at the beginning of the 14th century BC. Recent excavations of the Canaanite city of Hatzor could also support a 14th century Israelite invasion. Evidence has been uncovered that the city was destroyed at least twice during the period described in the biblical books of Joshua and Judges. Scattered among the remains of a large palace were Egyptian and Canaanite idols, their heads and hands intentionally chiseled off. Archaeologist Amnon Ben-Tor has concluded by process of elimination that the invading Israelites must have ravaged Hatzor, for neither the Egyptians nor the indigenous Canaanites would have purposely destroyed their own gods.
So we should expect to find evidence in Canaan for the conquest. And when we examine some of the places that are named in the book of Joshua, we do indeed find archaeological evidence to back up the biblical account.
If archaeological evidence shows that Israel appeared in the Promised Land between 1400 and 1200 BC, and if it also documents a Hebrew population in the Nile Delta for centuries before these dates, then one conclusion follows. The Israelites must have migrated from Egypt into Canaan, and an exodus actually occurred.